The Supreme Court has decided not to get involved in the NFL's concussion settlement with 20,000 players. That means $1 billion will go to those players who've been diagnosed with brain injuries linked to repeated concussions. While that money may help a little bit, the bigger victory would come from being able to diagnose those concussions earlier so they could be properly treated. Right now, getting an exact diagnosis can be tough, but as Stephanie Leiden shows us, a local biotech company believes they may have found the key in blood.
Along with blocking and tackling,
keep your leverage.
Cambridge Ridge and Latin football coach Ryan Saunier teaches his players another fundamental: concussion awareness.
We actually have to do a lot of coaching with the kids at the beginning of the year. You have to diagnose your own symptoms, so you can let us know.
Unlike, say, a broken ankle, diagnosing a concussion includes an element of guesswork. But just a few miles west of this Cambridge football field, a Lexington biotech company is touting what they say could be game-changing technology: a concussion blood test.
There's 212,000 holes in that little square.
Those holes are a kind of high-tech filter. Insert the disc into this machine and it can find what amounts to the equivalent of 1 grain in 2,000 swimming pools full of sand, a nearly invisible protein called a biomarker.
The amount that's in the blood is such a small quantity that nobody could see it. We can see it, and that's the breakthrough.
Kevin Rosofsky is the CEO here at Quanterix. He says soon-to-be-published research from the National Institutes of Health will show that the blood test offers conclusive evidence of concussions and their severity.
The information that's going to come from this study is going to be the first time they're going to be able to make predictions so that they can start to give the athlete or any patient some idea of how serious that concussion was and what's the likely time it's going to take for them to recover.
The blood test also shows promise in measuring something more subtle than concussions: the impact of small, constant hits to the head any football player might experience. At Boston University School of Medicine, Dr. Robert Stern used the Quanterix technology to test the blood of former NFL players without a history of concussions. He looked for a protein called tau, something associated with degenerative brain disease.
The more hits they had, the greater tau levels, which to me would indicate the greater amount of damage to their brains.
The impact of that damage, memory loss, and personality changes may not show up until decades after a player hangs up his helmet. But Stern says a blood test would offer tangible proof of something that right now is invisible: brain disease.
If there's a blood test that measures the progression of brain injury, could it potentially change the game of football?
Yeah.
And Stephanie Leiden joins me now. Stephanie, first question, obviously, is how soon people might be able to use this test to find out if they or their kid have a concussion. How quickly could this be on market?
Well, it's a matter of kind of downsizing it. Right now, the machine that tests the blood is about the size of a washer machine. Quanterix thinks they can get it to a bench size this time next year. Within 3 years, they anticipate having a handheld device that could be used on the sidelines.
And is it in clinical trials right now?
It's not in clinical trials. There is research being done. They think there's a potential workaround where it may not go to clinical trials.
All right, so you talked about a related test that would identify taus, right? A marker of
That's right.
brain disease caused by small-scale impacts to the head. Would that test be able to identify brain disease in time to stop it or roll it back, or would it only identify that condition when it was too late to do anything about it?
The hope is that something like a blood cholesterol test could be developed so that before season, you might get your blood tested if you're playing a sport where there's a potential of head injury, and it would measure your tau levels against the norm, and at the end of the season you could see if it's risen. So it'd be a lot like
that'd be a huge breakthrough, right? Because right now it's all about finding out after the fact.
After the fact, right after death. So Robert Stern, the neurologist from Boston University Medical School, is doing a big national study right now. So he's hoping that that research may contribute one day to something like a cholesterol test for brain health.
Okay, and just briefly, we talked about this technology being used to identify 2 different markers. Could this be used to identify other conditions too?
Yeah, the technology is being used at pharmaceutical companies. They're using it to test for things like cancer and heart disease. So we'll see.
All right, Stephanie Leiden, thank you.
You're welcome.
Next.